I have nothing left but my soul. Please save my child. My heart is yours, human." The planet was eerily silent, its barren landscape stretching endlessly under a pale blue sky. There were no trees, no animals, nothing but dust and rock. The man had been stranded here for weeks after his ship malfunctioned. His hope of rescue was fading with every passing day. But when the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in shadow, he found something that would change everything. It was late afternoon when he saw her lying motionless on the ground. He had been walking along the edge of a canyon, hoping to find anything that could help him survive, when a faint glimmer caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the light. But as he approached, the figure became clearer. Small, frail body was sprawled in the dirt, her skin pale and nearly translucent, her bones sticking out unnaturally. She was alien, her features unlike anything he'd ever seen. Thin blue veins traced her skin like a map, and her sharp, delicate features appeared frozen in agony. Her clothes were torn, almost completely shredded, barely clinging to her fragile frame. His heart raced as he knelt beside her, unsure of what to do. He couldn't even tell if she was alive. He reached out with a trembling hand, gently brushing her hair aside. Her face was so cold, her breathing almost imperceptible. It was clear she had been abandoned, left to die alone. But then, just as he was about to give up, a faint gasp escaped her lips. The man froze. Her chest rose slightly, a shallow breath that barely disturbed the dust around her. He stared at her, his mind racing. She was alive. With trembling hands he scooped her up, ignoring the weight of his own exhaustion. There was no time to waste. He needed to get her back to shelter, away from the harsh winds that were already picking up. Every second counted. The girl was so light in his arms, as if her body was nothing more than skin and bones. Her skin, almost translucent, seemed to shimmer faintly in the dimming light. It was almost as if she wasn't entirely real. But the pulse beneath her skin told him otherwise. She was alive, and he couldn't leave her here to die. He hurried back to his makeshift shelter, a small cave he'd found weeks ago. The cave was bare, cold, and unfriendly, but it was all he had. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts as he laid her down on the floor, checking her for any signs of injuries or wounds. The girl's chest rose and fell erratically, but her eyes remained closed. The man's hands shook as he examined her, searching for any sign that might explain what had happened to her. Her body was covered in strange markings, bruises that seemed to have a pattern, like the aftermath of some brutal torture. Who would do such a thing to someone so fragile? And why? His mind raced. Was she from a nearby planet? Had she been abandoned like him, or was she something else entirely? As he sat beside her, trying to make sense of it all, a cold chill ran down his spine. He wasn't alone. A distant sound echoed in the night, just outside the cave. It was faint, but it was there. The man's heart skipped a beat. The footsteps of someone or something moving in the darkness. Were they coming for her? For him? The girl shifted slightly, her eyes flickering open for a brief moment. She looked at him with eyes that were wide and full of fear, as if she knew something he didn't. She opened her mouth, but only a weak whisper escaped. "Help. Me." The man leaned in, his breath catching in his throat. He had no idea what he was dealing with. All he knew was that this alien, this strange, delicate creature, was in danger. And that danger was closing in on them, before he could say anything. The girl closed her eyes again, slipping back into unconsciousness. Her breathing grew shallow once more. He had to act fast. Whatever was out there, whatever had left her here, wasn't going to stop. He had to keep her safe. The man stood up quickly, looking around the cave. His eyes fell on the small fire he had made earlier, and he felt a surge of determination. He needed to keep her warm, keep her alive. And he needed to find out what had done this to her. But as he turned back to the girl, something deep inside him stirred. This was no ordinary alien. There was something about her, something that felt both fragile and dangerous at the same time. Suddenly, he heard it. Again. The footsteps, closer this time. He glanced towards the entrance, his body tensing. Whoever or whatever was out there, they were getting closer. The man had never known desperation until now. He had lived alone on this desolate planet for weeks, scavenging for food, struggling to survive, and watching the horizon for a rescue that never came. But finding her, this fragile alien girl, had ignited something deep within him. It wasn't just the promise of survival anymore. It was the need to protect her. When the girl's breath had steadied, he finally dared to believe she might live. He had carried her to his shelter, but the work wasn't over. Now he had to figure out how to keep her alive. He worked quickly. His hands shook as he rummaged through his supplies. There wasn't much, just a few cans of water, some dried meat, and a few items scavenged from his crashed ship. But none of that could help this alien girl. What she needed, what she really needed, was beyond his meager resources. As he knelt beside her, the firelight flickering on her pale face, he examined her more closely. Her once fragile skin had a faint iridescent glow, almost like a bioluminescent insect in the dark. Her chest rose and fell, a delicate rhythm that seemed to pulse with a life force of its own. She was fragile, but there was something about her, something that pulsed with untapped power. He had heard stories of alien races before. He had even seen a few, in passing, but nothing like this. This girl wasn't from any species he recognized. Her skin shimmered like the surface of a distant ocean. Her delicate, pointed ears, and those strange eyes darker than midnight, but with a depth that seemed to reach into the very stars themselves, were unlike anything he had ever seen. A soft groan escaped her lips, and the man's heart skipped a beat. She stirred slightly, her face contorting with pain. His instinct was to reach out to her, to comfort her, but he hesitated. He knew nothing of her kind. He had no idea what she might be capable of, or what might happen if she woke up and found him near her, but his concern for her outweighed any fear. Gently he reached for the water and held it to her lips. The girl's throat tightened at the python. First taste of liquid, but she drank greedily, as if she had not tasted anything in days, or perhaps even longer. When she finally pulled back, her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, they locked with his. Her gaze was intense, intelligent, and deeply unsettling. She was awake. And yet, something in her eyes told him she wasn't fully there. She seemed confused, lost, as if she didn't know where or even who she was. The man could hardly believe it when she spoke, her voice rasping and weak. "Who are you?" she whispered, her words barely audible. The man swallowed hard. He wasn't sure if it was the question or the fact that she had spoken at all that made his chest tighten. He had only seen her as a wounded, near-death creature. But now, with her eyes open, she was a person. A person with thoughts, feelings, and he realized a life that he was now responsible for. Just someone who found you, he said, his voice softer than he intended. "You're safe now. You don't have to worry." Her gaze didn't soften. Instead, she looked at him with something that bordered on suspicion, as if she could see through him. He wasn't sure if she understood his words, but the tension in the air was palpable. Her voice faltered, and she winced, clutching her side. She didn't finish the sentence. Instead, she slowly tried to sit up, and he instinctively reached out to stop her. "Don't try to move. You're still weak," he warned. She ignored him, pushing herself upright with a force that seemed to defy her fragile body. She was stronger than she looked, stronger than she should have been. "Why did you save me?" Her eyes met his again. But this time, there was a glint of something else in them. A sharpness, a hunger. "What do you want from me?" The question caught him off guard. He hadn't expected such directness, especially from someone so vulnerable. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. The girl's expression was unreadable, as though she was calculating something in her mind. Before he could speak, her head jerked towards the entrance of the cave. Her senses were heightened. The man heard it too, a distant sound, like the soft crunch of sand beneath boots. Someone was out there, and they were getting closer. His heart raced. Days passed, and the girl's condition slowly improved. The man watched in awe as she began to recover, her body healing at a rapid pace. He had expected slow progress, perhaps a week or more before she would even begin to look like herself. But what he didn't expect was the unnatural speed at which she was changing. The cave, once cold and empty, now felt alive with tension. Every day she seemed to grow stronger, more vibrant. At first it was small. Her eyes, once dull and lifeless, now gleamed with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. Then, her skin, which had been so thin and translucent, began to glow with a soft, radiant light, as if a hidden power was awakening deep inside her. The man couldn't explain it. He had never seen anything like it. He had heard stories of aliens with strange abilities, but this felt different, like something was shifting beneath the surface. Something dangerous. It was late one night, as the fire flickered low and the shadow stretched long across the cave, that he noticed it for the first time. The girl, now sitting upright in her makeshift bed, was no longer the fragile, starved creature he had found days ago. She was sitting with her back straight, her long limbs stretched out before her. Her eyes locked with his, and for the first time, he felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in her gaze, something raw, untamed, like a predator awakening. After a long slumber, "Why are you looking at me like that?" The words left his mouth before he could stop them, the unease growing inside him. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as though considering his question. Her expression shifted, more playful, almost seductive. A soft smile curled at the corners of her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. The air between them grew thick with unspoken tension. "I'm feeling better," she said, her voice low and almost hypnotic. "Better than I've ever felt." The man blinked, his throat tight. Something about her words didn't sit right with him. Her voice was like silk, smooth and gentle, but there was an underlying force in it, an energy that seemed to pulse with every word she spoke. He cleared his throat. "That's good, but you need to take it slow. Don't push yourself." Her smile widened, and she stood up, her movements fluid and almost graceful. The firelight flickered across her face, and the man took a step back, his heart rate quickening. The girl stretched her arms above her head, her body moving with an unnatural ease. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, and the man couldn't help but notice the subtle changes. Her once fragile frame was now more defined, her features sharper, more striking. She looked different, more powerful, more dangerous. "Don't worry," she said, her voice like honey. "I won't hurt you." But the man wasn't so sure. He watched as her eyes shifted from curious to something darker, something that he couldn't quite understand. It was as if she was studying him, reading his every move, every thought. The way her eyes moved slowly, almost predatory, left him unsettled. She took a step closer, and for the first time, he noticed the subtle changes in her posture. The way she held herself now was different, more confident, almost regal. She was no longer the frail girl he had found, but something else entirely. The man's mind raced. What is happening to her? The girl stopped just a few feet from him, her eyes never leaving his. Her lips parted slightly, and for a brief moment, she seemed almost like she was about to say something, but then she froze. Her body stiffened, her eyes narrowing with sudden focus. He followed her gaze to the entrance of the cave. The air seemed to change, thickening with tension. A distant sound echoed from outside, something unnatural, a low hum, like a faint vibration in the ground. The girl's expression darkened, and she turned towards him, her eyes filled with urgency. "They're here," she whispered. Before he could react, The air shifted. The temperature seemed to drop, and a cold wind began to howl through the cracks in the cave. The fire flickered, almost as if it was fighting to stay alive. The girl's gaze turned to him, intense and sharp. "You need to protect me." The man felt a sudden surge of panic. "Who's coming?" She didn't answer. Instead, she moved faster than he thought possible, crossing the room in the blink of an eye, her hand pressing against his chest. The touch was light, but it sent a shock of warmth through his body. For a split second, he felt his heart race. The days were growing darker. The winds howled more fiercely now, the air thick with an ominous energy. The girl, no longer the fragile being he had found on the planet's surface, had become something entirely different. She had changed in ways the man couldn't explain, her power growing with every passing hour. Each night, she seemed to move with more confidence, more purpose. And yet, every time she looked at him, there was a haunting emptiness behind her eyes. He knew she was hiding something. And the more he tried to get close, the more distant she became. He had to know the truth. It was late one evening when he decided to confront her. She was standing by the entrance of the cave, her gaze fixed on the horizon, her body rigid, almost as if she were waiting for something or someone. The fire flickered low behind them, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. He stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "You're not telling me everything, are you?" She didn't turn to face him immediately. Instead, she stood there, silent for a long moment. The man waited, feeling the weight of her gaze on him, even though he couldn't see her face. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You wouldn't understand." He took a step closer, anger creeping into his voice. "Try me. I saved you. I've kept you alive. I deserve to know the truth." For the first time, she turned to face him. Her eyes, those dark, fathomless eyes, held something new. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a truth far darker than he could have imagined. There was no hesitation now. She no longer seemed fragile or vulnerable. She was dangerous, and she knew it. "I'm not like you," she said, her voice steady, yet laced with something he couldn't quite place. "I'm not a simple girl. I was never meant to be saved." The man frowned, his confusion deepening. "What are you talking about?" Her lips curled into a faint, almost sad smile. "I was born into a world of war, of bloodshed. My people are ancient, older than the stars themselves, and we have the power to destroy entire worlds." The man's stomach twisted. "What do you mean? You're just a girl?" "No, I'm more than that," she interrupted, her voice growing colder. "I've been running for centuries, hiding from those who would use me as a weapon. My power, it's what they want. It's why they left me on that wasteland. They didn't expect me to survive. But I did." The man stared at her, his mind racing. "You're telling me you're a weapon?" She nodded, her expression darkening. "More than that. I'm a key to something far worse than anything you can imagine. Something that could unravel the fabric of reality itself." His mind reeled. "How? What do you mean? What are you talking about?" The girl took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "The power inside me is linked to an ancient force, one that exists beyond time and space. It can control life itself. My people. They've been searching for me, trying to harness my power. But they don't know what they're dealing with. If they find me again, it will be too late." The man took a step back, his breath catching in his throat. This was more than he had bargained for. He had thought he was saving a lost, dying girl, but now he realized he had gotten himself involved in something far beyond his understanding. "You're saying these people, they're coming after you, and you have the power to destroy everything?" The girl nodded slowly. "Yes, but it's not just them. There are others who want me for their own purposes. They won't stop until they have me, no matter the cost." She took another step closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. And you're caught in the middle. You've seen my power. You've felt it. Now you must decide. Will you help me unlock it? Or will you try to stop it from ever being unleashed? The air between them thickened, the tension almost unbearable. The man's heart raced, his mind a whirlwind of fear and disbelief. He had no idea what he was being asked. He had no idea who or what she truly was. The girl's eyes darkened again, the flickering firelight reflecting off her glowing skin. Whatever you choose, the consequences will be far beyond what you can imagine. But remember this, human nothing can stop what's already begun. He stood there, frozen in place. He was caught between the girl who had once seemed so fragile and the dangerous being standing before him now. She was no longer just a lost soul. She was a force of nature, and he was right in her path. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The girl's eyes narrowed, and she looked toward the entrance of the cave once more. "They're coming," she whispered, a note of urgency creeping into her voice. "They're closer than I thought." The man turned toward the entrance. As the faint sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, his heart skipped a beat. Whoever or whatever was out there, it was too late to turn back now. This part dives deeper into the mystery of the girl's origins, revealing a dark and complex history tied to powers far beyond human understanding. It raises the stakes, pulling the audience. The days had stretched into an uneasy silence. The girl, now fully awake and more powerful than ever, had become a constant presence in the cave. Her gaze always distant, her movements controlled. But there was something new in the air and unspoken. Tension that had settled between them. She was no longer the helpless, fragile alien he had found in the desert. She was a force, unpredictable and dangerous. The man had tried to make sense of everything: her transformation, the power within her, the strange history she had shared. But the more he learned, the more he felt like a pawn in a game he didn't understand. She had told him that she was being hunted, that her power could destroy everything if unleashed. But as the days passed, the weight of her words pressed harder against his chest. It was the evening when the storm arrived. The wind howled outside the cave, the rain battering the entrance with such force that the man thought the rocks might shift. He stood by the fire, staring into the flames, trying to ignore the growing unease gnawing at his gut. She hadn't spoken to him for hours. It was as if she was waiting for something, watching, waiting. Then she spoke. "Do you trust me?" Her voice, low and smooth, sliced through the silence, sending a shiver down his spine. He glanced up from the fire, meeting her gaze. The intensity in her eyes hadn't dulled. It was sharper, more calculated now. "Of course I do," he replied, though even as the words left his mouth, he wondered if they were true. She stood from her place by the cave's wall, her figure silhouetted against the flickering light. The shadows cast a strange glow on her face, making her look almost otherworldly, like a predator preparing to strike. "You're lying," she said softly. "You don't trust me, not fully." The man's breath hitched. "What are you talking about?" Her eyes narrowed, piercing through him with unnerving clarity. "You've been keeping something from me." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He could feel his pulse quicken. He had been careful, hadn't he? He had kept her secret, the one she didn't know he knew. The secret of the signal he had intercepted from his ship's distress beacon, a signal that had nothing to do with his rescue and everything to do with her. The girl tilted her head, studying him. "You didn't think I would find out, did you?" He remained silent, his throat dry. He couldn't lie to her, not anymore. The truth had a way of slipping out when you least expected it. Her lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't comforting. It was a smile of someone who had already won. "I know what you've done," she said, her voice a whisper of silk and steel. "You've called them." The man's heart dropped. "You're wrong. Don't lie to me." She stepped closer, her every movement calculated, predatory. You thought you could trick me. You thought you could keep me in the dark. But I see everything. I've always seen everything. The man's mind reeled. He had hoped, no, he had convinced himself that helping her meant protecting her from the people who were hunting her. But the signal, it was a beacon, a call for help. The very people she had warned him about. The ones who would stop at nothing to use her power. I didn't want to do this, he whispered, his voice shaking. I was trying to protect you. She stopped in front of him, her gaze unyielding. Protect me? You were never trying to protect me. You were trying to control me. His breath hitched. That's not true. She reached out and touched his chest lightly, the coolness of her fingers sending a shiver through him. It is true. You knew they were coming. You knew they would find me. And you, she paused, her expression hardening, you led them straight to me. A sudden wave of guilt washed over him. He hadn't meant for it to happen like this. He had thought that by contacting his people, by reaching out for help, he could save her from the danger she was in. He hadn't realized the danger he was placing them both in by making that call. The girl's eyes glowed faintly as she stepped back, breaking the contact. You've betrayed me, she said coldly. And now there will be consequences. The man opened his mouth to protest, to explain himself, but the words wouldn't come. The realization settled in his stomach like a stone. He had made the wrong choice. Suddenly, the air in the cave shifted, the temperature dropping. A low hum began to vibrate through the walls, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The girl turned toward the entrance, her eyes narrowing. They're here, she said, her voice now filled with a calmness that sent chills down his spine. It's too late to turn back now. The man's heart hammered in his chest. He rushed to the entrance, peering into the dark, but saw nothing. The storm outside was relentless, the rain coming down in sheets. But then, he heard a voice, distant but clear, cutting through the chaos. Are you ready? The voice was unmistakable, cold, calculating. The man froze. He knew that voice. It was the voice of the very people he had tried to contact. They had come, just as the girl had warned. And now there was no escape. He turned back to the girl, but she was already gone, disappearing into the shadows. Her eyes glowed in the dark, the faint light casting an eerie glow on her face. You made your choice, she whispered. Now you must live with it. And with that, she vanished into the night, leaving him alone with the consequences of his actions. This part heightens the drama with betrayal, guilt, and the realization that the stakes have escalated. The tension is palpable, and the man now faces the consequences of his choices, which will have far-reaching effects as the story progresses. Ask ChatGPT. The storm raged outside the cave, but the chaos inside was far more dangerous. The man stood in the center of the cave, his heart hammering in his chest as the girl's disappearance left a void that felt like an impending collapse. She had vanished without a trace, as if the shadows had swallowed her whole. The hum from outside grew louder, vibrating through the rocks beneath his feet, sending a chill crawling up his spine. He had made a mistake, he realized that now. The signal he had sent had brought more than just help. It had brought danger, but the girl had been right all along. He had thought he was doing the right thing, but now he had unwittingly led the hunters to her. And her words echoed in his mind, "You've betrayed me." And yet, she was the one who had left. She had vanished before he could even say a word. Now, the question wasn't whether he had betrayed her, it was whether he could undo the damage. The hum outside stopped abruptly, replaced by the unmistakable sound of engines. A craft, large, low. The shadows outside the cave deepened, the rain pouring harder than ever. The man ran to the entrance, his eyes scanning the endless dark. But the storm obscured everything. Then he saw it. A flicker of movement in the distance. just beyond the reach of the rain-soaked horizon. The unmistakable silhouette of a ship descending, cutting through the thick storm like a predator on the hunt. It was them, the ones who had been after her. They had found her, and now they were here for him too. He didn't have time to think. He had to act. He turned and bolted into the cave's depths, past the fire and the remnants of their makeshift shelter, heading for the back entrance, an old passage he had stumbled upon when he first arrived. It was his only escape route, but before he could reach it, the ground shook beneath him. The cave rumbled like a beast awakening from slumber, and he was thrown off his feet. He scrambled to stand, but the walls began to crack, dust falling like sand in the wind. The entrance. It was too late to escape. The man's pulse raced as the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the mouth of the cave, coming closer with every passing second. It was them tall figures cloaked in dark armored suits. They moved in synchronized steps, their shadows stretching against the walls like predators circling their prey. "Where is she?" a voice demanded, low and menacing. The man froze. His body tensed, but his mind screamed for him to run. There was no escape, not unless he confronted them. He had made this mess. He had to fix it. "Tell me where she is, human," the voice growled again, louder this time. He glanced back over his shoulder, trying to find any way out. His eyes landed on the girl's abandoned blanket by the fire. She had been here. She had been here, and then she had gone. But where? Answer me. The figure shouted, stepping into the dim light of the cave. The man's heart skipped a beat as he realized the true danger. They weren't just here for the girl. They were here for him too. He had been the one who had led them to this planet, to the girl who was far more than she appeared. The girl who wasn't just a victim. He gritted his teeth and stepped forward, facing the strangers. "You won't find her. She's gone." The figures stopped, their helmets gleaming under the flickering firelight. One of them taller, more imposing than the others, leaned forward, his voice dripping with venom. "You think she's gone? She can't hide from us. We've been hunting her for centuries. You're just a small part of the game. You're in the way now." A cold sweat ran down the man's back. They weren't just here to capture her. They were here to end this, to erase every trace of her existence. They would destroy anything that stood in their way, and now they were after him. Without another word, the man turned and sprinted into the dark passage. He knew the way. The passage would take him to the old ruins on the far side of the planet, long abandoned, forgotten by time, but the only place he could think of where he might find cover. The rumble of engines was close now, the ship hovering just above the cave. The man could feel the vibrations in his bones, and he knew they were almost upon him. He could hear them following, their footsteps echoing like the countdown to an inevitable end. But something was wrong. There was no time. He wasn't running from them anymore. He was running from her. The girl. Where was she? Was she even still alive? As he reached the old ruins, he felt the ground tremble beneath his feet once more. The rain had turned into a torrential downpour, but the weather wasn't the cause. It was her. She had returned. He could feel it, the power radiating from the cave, from the very ground beneath his feet. The girl wasn't gone. She had just been waiting. And now, she was about to unleash the full force of her power on. The wind howled through the ruins, carrying with it the taste of rain and the promise of impending destruction. The man stood at the edge of the cliff, staring down at the wreckage below. His heart was in his throat, his thoughts tangled in a storm as wild as the one raging outside. The girl, no, the force had returned. And now, the final battle was upon them, behind him. The rumble of engines grew louder, the metallic groan of the hunter's ship descending once more. They were relentless, closing in on them from all sides, their every step a countdown to something he didn't fully understand. But as he looked toward the girl standing tall, poised in the center of the ruins, Eyes burning with unearthly power, he knew one thing for certain. His life would never be the same. She wasn't just the girl he had saved anymore. She was something more, a weapon, a key to something dark and ancient, a force that could obliterate anything in its path. And now it was him who had to choose, to stop her and end the chaos, or to join her and let the world burn. He could feel her power radiating through the air, like the pull of 1,000 stars collapsing into a single black hole. It was magnificent and terrifying. The rain swirled around her, clinging to her shimmering skin like droplets of light, as if the universe itself was bending to her will. The man's breath caught in his chest. He didn't know what to do. He had saved her. He had tried to protect her, but now he could see the truth in her eyes, the cold, calculating truth. She was a force of nature, and no one, not even him, could stand in her way. Do you see it? Her voice cut through the wind, soft and hypnotic. Do you see what I've become, what we could become together? Her words sent a shiver down his spine. He turned to face her, his mind clouded with indecision. I never wanted this, he said, his voice raw, shaking. I wanted to help you. I thought you were someone who needed saving. Her lips twisted into a smile, but it wasn't kind. It wasn't reassuring. It was a smile that spoke of a truth he couldn't deny. You did save me, but you saved the wrong part of me. You didn't save my soul, you saved the shell. And now it's time for the world to witness who I really am. The sky crackled above them as the hunters landed, their ship settling with a low, thunderous hum. The figures emerged, armored and imposing, their faces hidden behind dark visors. They had come for her, but they didn't know what they were truly up against. The man's heart pounded in his chest. The girl had power now, power beyond comprehension. And yet, she stood there, waiting for him to make his choice. He could feel her eyes burning into him, demanding an answer. He stepped forward, trembling. I won't let you destroy everything. You are more than just a weapon. You're something else. You're alive. You deserve a life beyond this. She tilted her head, regarding him with something like pity. I don't need your mercy, I never did. You don't understand what it means to be born of a different universe, to carry the weight of powers you can't even fathom. I was never meant to be saved, human. I was meant to reign. The hunters approached, weapons raised, their eyes never leaving the girl. The man's pulse quickened. It wasn't just the girl's life on the line anymore. It was everything. The fate of this world, of everything he had ever known, hinged on what happened next. He looked at her, really looked at her. And in that moment, he realized something he had refused to see before. She wasn't just a victim of her circumstances. She had chosen this path. She had always known who she was, and now she wanted him to choose a side. His hands clenched into fists, his heart thundering in his chest. The choice he had to make was not just about saving her or stopping her. It was about choosing who he wanted to be in the end, someone who protected, or someone who destroyed. The hunters raised their weapons, preparing to strike, their faces full of cold determination. The girl's eyes flashed. The man could see it. She was ready to unleash her power, to tear everything apart. And then it hit him. The girl didn't need him to choose for her. She needed him to choose for himself. With a deep breath, he turned away from her and ran toward the hunters, throwing himself into the line of fire. The girl's power was immense, but he had learned something about her, something deep within her heart. She wasn't evil. She wasn't a villain. She was a force lost, confused, and seeking direction. He would be the one to save her, not by stopping her power, but by reminding her what it meant to feel, to choose. The hunter's weapons discharged in a violent flash, but the man didn't hesitate. He dove in front of the blast, his body crumpling